Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today as we talk about modern leadership in a post COVID world. So, of course, we're a few years removed from the heart of the pandemic. We're still, of course, living with a lot of the implications that the pandemic left us with, despite being 5 years removed from the start of that pandemic. And of course, along the way, leadership and the workforce has changed a considerable amount, especially because we've introduced a lot of advancements, and we're still grappling with the needs and the wants of both the workforce and the companies and organizations that employ that workforce. So let's go ahead and dive in today. We're going to look at, of course, modern leadership and what our current state is, and kind of how we as leaders can take the next step and make working environments a lot more pleasant for everybody involved as we navigate and transition into this new tech-driven world. All right, as I mentioned, we're moving into a tech-powered workforce. So the pandemic really threw us into remote work, where previously in 2019 and early 2020, most of the workforce was in office full-time. There was a very slim portion of the workforce that was working remotely or even in hybrid working scenarios. So the pandemic really forced us to retool the operating models that we use to get work done, and we're now using those same tools to encroach into global markets. So that allows us to hire from global markets and to attract customers from global markets. Of course, those new technologies are also simplifying the organizational structures that we're familiar with. A lot of companies are downsizing. They're getting rid of employees that they deem unnecessary or redundant. Of course, we hear about layoffs very frequently in our news cycles, and that's a signal, that's signaling that simplification of the organizational structures. What we need then from those organizational structures are visionary and progressive leaders. We need those leaders who can articulate what it is that the vision and the future is going to bring for the company, and be able to inspire the employees that are still there in the workforce, inspire them to be able to do more with fewer resources, but also leveraging technology in a way that they don't feel overwhelmed with this changing working environment. That means a lot of these jobs are going to transition from what you know to the skills, the hard skills that you have. So a lot of upskilling and things like that are going to be necessary. And leaders themselves are also going to need to take on additional skills and additional roles. And of course, those new roles are going to be like the CIOs, the Chief Information Officer, the CRO, the Chief Robotics Officers, and the CDOs, the Chief Data Officers, with flatter organization charts with fewer middle managers, so that structure is going to be compressed a little bit. And that also leads to innovation and worker freedom. So there's going to be less oversight from those middle managers watching over you and micromanaging you, giving you the room, the space to flex your creative muscles and really get jobs done in new, unique, creative ways. Of course, we're going to take a look at the landscape that we're experiencing right now. So, in many metrics, of course, the middle America is not feeling this at all, but the economy has rebounded for a large portion of the metrics that economists use to measure such things. So, here we can see a graph, the GDP pre pandemic and after pandemic. Obviously, we've rebounded quite a bit in that regard as of 2023. Now that we're in 2025, we are faced with new economic challenges, keeping inflation low and making sure that our unemployment rate doesn't explode either as these transitions are taking place. That also being said, a few of these important organizations like the CBPP and the NIH have both produced research documents proving that now that we're past the pandemic quite a ways, a few years removed, that we are starting to see the economic rebound even faster than the 2008 rebound, which really bodes well for the future of work in general. So, of course, I've already talked quite a bit about how employment is changing, and this lady here below Her name is Deborah Piscioni. I'm probably butchering the heck out of that name, but she sat down with the IdeaCast podcast, which is presented by the Harvard Business Review, and she spoke in great length about how we are now decentralizing the workforce, which means we're no longer moving into that traditional 9 to 5 kind of roles that our parents and grandparents did. Now we're evolving into gig work where we're stringing together modular gigs or modular employment to create a sustainable approach to living. We're also using tools like the generative AI assistants and automations to help us get the job done faster and ultimately unlocking more time for ourselves. We don't want to spend 40 hours a week in the workforce anymore. We want to have adequate amount of time to be able to spend with our families and our friends and do things that are important to us, like our hobbies or traveling. And with this kind of gig-based economy or modular approach to employment, we're going to have greater flexibility in what we do, how we do it, and when we get those things done. Of course, at the heart of this transition is technology. We mentioned already the autonomous workflows, the chat GPTs, the automated assistants, things like that. But kind of diving in a little bit more technically, we can see that a lot more jobs are being delivered virtually via the blockchain and through decentralized autonomous organizations. So what that means is these employers, they're sending out projects to qualified employees via the blockchain. So these are secure blocks that allow projects to transition between employer and employee or contractor, independent employee back to the company without any kind of threat from outside attack or anything like that, which really kind of mitigates cybersecurity issues. But it also means that a greater number of people can work on projects. They don't have to be in the same city or even in the same neighborhood to get work done. They can be across the world in a completely different country, completely different continent for that matter, and they can still get high quality work done no matter where they are. That also kind of ties into the idea of smart contracts, which are again delivered via the blockchain. They're projects that are delivered based on whether you're qualified or if you have the skill set that's needed to get a job done. Then those smart contracts will be able to identify that and deliver projects which you can then accept or decline based on your preferences as well. And then finally, we have digital twinning and meta virtualized workforces, which is kind of an emerging work strategy, I guess you could say, but it's really promising a lot of advancements and a lot of different ways, unique ways of solving problems that we may not even know we have yet. So what does this technology mean, and what does it mean working in this modern workforce? It means that we need a new kind of leader. So this is a leader who emphasizes a democratic leadership style, where they're no longer authoritarian, you listen to me because I'm the boss, but rather, hey, let's come together and find out what we need as far as timelines, skill sets, or project details to get things done without a drain on the relationships between the leader and the followers. So we can see facilitated interactions between those two parties as outlined by Johnson and Hackman in their 2018 textbook, where this decentralized followers, they're completely capable of getting the work done. They don't need that oversight. So we recall back to that flattened organizational chart with fewer middle managers with oversight on the workforce. That means that those employees can stretch their creative wings and get things done in a more creative way. But that also allows remote and contracted workforces to kind of expand a little bit more. So despite the return to office strategies a lot of businesses are employing, a hybrid and remote workforce is going to ultimately be what allows those businesses to collaborate with a larger number of skilled employees to get jobs done better or at a higher quality, or finding those employees that are skilled outside of their traditional markets. So that means we need transformational leadership. So transformational leadership, these are creative, interactive, visionary, empowering, and passionate leaders. So we go first, we start with creative leaders. That's kind of the bottom of the pyramid here. So these are leaders that must decide on the right tools, how to solve problems out of the box with out-of-the-box thinking, and developing teams who work on-site and remotely. These are leaders who are not afraid to get creative and think outside of the box to get jobs done and to hire the right kinds of people. Leaders must also be interactive, and that's the next step of the pyramid here. They must keep teams engaged, whether or not they are in office or they're working remotely. An engaged team is a productive and efficient team, so those leaders are essential, and that trait is essential for leaders in the modern workforce. We also need visionary and empowering leaders. So these are leaders who recognize trends and emerging tools such as AI, and they're able to empower employees to use those tools to get the jobs done quicker and with less effort. I guess those employees that know how to use these things are getting more work done with less stress and less strain on their mental capacity, and they're going home and they're feeling fulfilled with the work that they do. And finally, we need a passionate leader. These are leaders who are engaged in all levels of the organization. With the flattened hierarchies that we talked about, they're not afraid to roll up the sleeves and get the work done themselves as well. And they're equally as capable of using some of those advanced tools to deliver high quality work at the end of the day. And I'd like to thank you for spending the last 10-15 minutes with me as we explore modern leadership. This is my first kind of video talking about this kind of thing. It was originally for a school assignment. I've just repurposed it and re-recorded myself to talk about things in a more kind of business-centric manner. If you'd like to dive into any of the topics that I've talked about through this video in depth, here are some great resources and the resources I used to help me put this presentation together. With that being said, I really appreciate your time and thank you so much. Follow along for more leadership and entrepreneurial insights.